Welcome in to the Rochford Files. Here with your host. That's kind of between the coast. Coming to you live from the Mile Highland City. This is Andrew Rochford. And this show is live on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter on a nice, cooler Wednesday night here from this home. And it's also good to be right in the thick of things and coming to you live again. Good amount of interesting stuff to get into here, including the new performative queen, AOC. Then we're going to talk a bit about the bad thing they did to compound their useful performativeness. Couple things through the house that they've been trying, but yes, as obviously, please like and share the stream if you're watching from YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe as well if you're new. In addition to that, if you're on Twitch, please click that follow button and also share the stream out to anyone that you know may or may not be interested. And I feel like my show is a bit more palatable for the may not be interested types, but ultimately that is up for them to decide. As you can see here, let's see, what should we start off with? Because I've also got the Respect for Marriage Act. We can talk about that as well. And we got to do a little reflection on the whole Aurora theater thing. So that'll include some of my perspective from what I was going through on that day. But I'll save that for later on in the show. What's important is for now is to get right into this. Let's start off with the whole AOC. This isn't, as you're going to see in this video, this is more than just your basic breaking of kayfabe. My God, it's more. It's worse than that. And let's start here. So let's put that video up and play. Gonna let that play a couple times. Notice the fake handcuffing. Oh, look. I'm so fucking over. As I look at a crowd with no reaction. There's nothing hot about that. For those of you who are wrestling fans, there's this big long series called Botchamania, which compiles all the moments in wrestling where someone botched. And I think we're getting to a point where we seriously need a political version of botchamania, because that shit really takes the cake. You're pretending to be handcuffed when, and that also shows you how coordinated it is as well. Because if these officers really felt threatened by that, uh, then they would not be letting AOC slide with just holding her wrist together. Hey, Kelly, what was the whole point of this? She's going to be mocked more than this for the actual reason all those people are there. Exactly. And I'm going to do what I like to do best, and that's bring wrestling references. Imagine if Stone Cold Steve Austin, for example, back when he was the hot anti-authority babyface, and there was a moment where, in when one of those angles where police try to take him off backstage, and let's say that one of those handcuffs got loose. Imagine if he realizes his hand gets loose and he raises his fist. How stupid that would be if he only put his hand right behind his back instead of what would logically make sense for Stone Cold Steve Austin to do, which would be to punch those fake cops. And that's exactly the type of utter absurdity, stupidity that got displayed the moment that AOC broke kayfabe and brought that right arm out to raise it to a crowd that looked to be pretty dead in response, even though that there are going to be a few people who are going to give the obligatory pop towards that. But let's be real, that type of response really should have deserved a boo. See, I saw a good thread of someone going in on AOC, so I thought it'd be a good one to share. This one comes from your Aries Media. And for those of you who are curious, I am Aries as well. Thread, to who it may apply to, y'all need to let AOC go. Ain't nothing special about what she or the squad is doing. Is helping in any capacity. Y'all just love applauding celebrity culture, politicians landing magazine covers, and being performative through girl boss politics. You see that cheesy ass grin? The obsession with trying to shield her from critique is one of many reasons why politicians continue to feel emboldened, because all they have to do is fart, and y'all will be the first ones following in suit to smell it. They do not care about you or your liberation. That's right. And also, the people among the first people who will be telling you to follow that will be also the ones trying to call said politicians based for farting, like Kyle Kalinske did. Yes, it's true that every politician is a part of U.S. electoral politics is corrupt. Therefore, none of y'all's girl boss, capitalist, feminist faves are exempt. Each and every facet of U.S. governmental institutions are founded on white supremacy, anti-blackness, elitism, etc. The reason why y'all see folks like AOC smiling when she's not even in handcuffs, and politicians like Boris Johnson saying "Hasta la vista, baby" in the House of Commons, is because politicians everywhere think what's always been on the line for us is a joke. At the end of the day, folks like AOC, Sanders, the Squad, Pelosi, etc., don't care about anything else. Making sure their bag is secure and that they continue to gain seats and full on support. They could care less about you suffering, so stop writing these clowns. This is the same person that, while black protesters are being assaulted outside the 2021 Met Gala, she was too busy in her own city mingling with billionaires and multimillionaires as they partied and held their exclusive event in a white supremacist space. No one who is providing rightful critiques about AOC is targeting her. Y'all just, like at Presidentes said in the comments, continue to put her on this pedestal and believe she is above being critiqued for how she is helping these capitalist and anti-black systems persist. These, quote, progressive politicians y'all love so much choose to be part of institutions that historically and still continue to harm against black and brown communities. Thinking that AOC or even Abrams infiltrating into these systems is going to help is harmful rhetoric. The protests yesterday and AOC's entire political career have been examples of how progressive politicians have platforms that are not a substance, but rather used to pull people in with no real results. Just them being a person of color now in that position of power. No matter the black folks or people of color you throw in office, that does not guarantee they're going to do right by you. By design and default, when they pledge to these oaths, they are putting liberation at a respectable compromise, when there should be no such thing. For y'all who are quick to be a smart aleck and ask about solutions when bluntness is in these combos. It's funny how cowardly y'all are to not have that same energy for folks who are supposed to be engaging in that work. We already know they won't, but y'all move funny. Politicians do not care about your humanity. They consider you to be a paycheck and ways to keep their social capital strong. It's all connected to how this country weaponizes representation in order to continue its assimilationist, corrupt, and white supremacist foundations. There was so much shots made in that thread right there, and wonder how many of these progressives, the squad defenders, are they going to call this woman misogynist? Can they? They can't call her racist because, like a lot the other quote white leftists, they can't break that line out on her because this woman is black. So once again, when you're in this space, it's easy to just nullify some criticisms of AOC and other squad members, but you can't play those cards on her. And what makes it worse is, for some of these people, is some of these sycophants are probably twice the age of her, because this woman is saying this at 21 years old. And I wish I could figure this shit out at 21 years old. But when I was 21, I didn't care enough about politics to have to be so spot on in a way like she was in this thread, as Kelly endorses. But instead, it took me to like my 30s to get to that point. So a lot of credit for a lot of these Zoomers who are getting to figure this shit out a lot sooner than some of us have. But it actually gets worse for AOC and the squad. I mean, check out this photo. As you can see right here, it's Ayanna Pressley, Rashida Tlaib, Cori Bush, Ilhan Omar, along with AOC. They're doing what they do best. They do the shit that's conveniently easy for them to do. And photo ops and empty tweets with no follow up beyond that, that is right up their alley. Just like you saw with AOC and Cori Bush during that eviction moratorium. Don't forget when people like Colin Radix Carter of INN and Frank Analysis were there trying to ask them real questions about the 10% that were being left out from the whole eviction moratorium. They ignored them. They turned the music up on them. They decided to dance and celebrate. When it comes time to answer to real questions about force the votes and why they're not using the current numbers that exist in the House right now as a tool of leverage to get any type of thing done. What they'll do is just sick their bodyguard on you and ignore you. And who is AOC trying to impress by being the only one to raise the left fist up while everyone else holds up the right? But the thing is here, they just don't even look credible or serious. They just scream major mid-card stable who you know isn't gonna really win anything meaningful. Yet there's still so many people who have this whole false hope in this group. And they're also being, some of those people, by the way, are being led by, off that cliff, by a bunch of bullshit artists in the process. And this was just an example overall about the bad, meaningless performatism that often is it's the logic that I'm failing to understand here with this one, Kelly, because I guess I could give Ilhan Omar an extra creative point for using hers as an apron. But overall, that was just nothingness. Oh, but wait. Just wait. Because AOC took to Twitter to explain holding her hands behind her back when that officer did that fake ass arrest. So let's go to the photo she posts first. And this comes from, I'm going to guess, someone who's probably a Republican House candidate. Politics, I could be wrong though, since it doesn't say a party. Party politics has become performative art. So of course, at AOC fakes being in handcuffs. Performance, not policy, is the name of the game up here. No faking here. Putting your hands up behind your back is a best practice while detained, handcuff or not, to avoid escalating charges like resisting arrest. But given how you lied about a fellow rape survivor for points, as you put it to me, I don't expect much from you. And as usual, AOC, what she has become is someone who's always trying to uh, go into like ir- irrelevant diversions whenever someone, whenever she feels the need to respond to someone's criticism. And what, because, a few weeks ago, a couple months ago, when she responded to some right wing criticism, she pretty much said it was because she wouldn't like him. So that's just the lameness of how AOC is so un- unserious here. But let's break down the arguments she uses here and how this is just going to become what I think is going to open up a new Pandora's box whenever we see another black man get shot by the police. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening, Kelly. That she used to have more substantive tweets, and I'm gonna guess that's a switch that she's eventually gonna flip when it's when the Republicans control everything again, and that since she has no interest in actually challenging Joe Biden, I mean, she did say that he was exceeding expectations. But let's get down to the point of this. Think about the police state that AOC, by the way, voted present in order to allow more funding for the Capitol Police last year. Think about that police state that when they're getting to the, when they decide they want to be brutal to black and brown people, for example, think about how well it has worked out for them to just put their hands behind their back. Because there's plenty of video footage out there that shows that it wasn't good enough and that they were just motherfuckers on a power trip. And it didn't really matter how compliant they tried to be in that moment. They were going to get off on being a fucking psychopathic bully. And just know that when you catch an officer at the wrong time, that you could put your hands behind your back and you could do it well before they ask, try to follow orders the best you can, because hey, maybe you, instead of, well, following the order within like a second, that doing it 2 seconds later was enough to, what, maybe that get punched in the back, then stomped to the ground. And I feel like that's the thing that AOC is missing from this. Hey, WCSN. Good to see you're here. And I can't wait, because now you're going to see some people quote AOC the next time one of these police shoot murderings become viral. And I wouldn't even be surprised to see some of these shitlibs follow in on it too. Oh, you should have. That guy should have put his hands behind his back like AOC. When the reality is, some of these people just are never going to get that. There's going to be officers who aren't going to care how well you can follow orders to the bestest of your ability, that they're still going to make that moment of living hell for you. And that it's clear as day to me that when AOC says this, it means that she has ascended in status in society when you're able to have the opportunity to just be walked away with your hands behind your back, because that's not real life. You are going to get handcuffed. And you probably are going to get put to the ground. And at the moments where you get cuffed and you still are able to stay on your feet aren't as frequent as you would think. And this is why it's important to point out how liberal your progressive squad members are turning on you in real time. Because from the moment that Biden took office, it's been obvious that these people are not going to fight for you. And that the only way that you're going to get anything achieved at this time is outside of these elections. Remember when Biden, remember, he was arrested sticking up for fair housing in the 60s when no one could find any photos? Yeah, WCSN, just like when he said he was with Nelson Mandela as well. Oh, yeah, she's barking from the bedroom right now. Not much you can do when she's that far away. All right, since you asked for it. Of course. She goes back in when I try to get her to show up. But as you can see, I'm streaming live for you while watching INN's new stream. So yes, I do try to support other channels while I stream live, if you can tell. Yeah, pretty much it, but it was a bit shorter than I would have liked. Should have stood out for a couple seconds longer. But now it's a good point to go over what Max Blumenthal alluded to when he responded to that AOC handcuffing yesterday, and it's what the House just did in relations to NATO. And what the House just did was approve resolution supporting Finland, Sweden joining NATO. Only Republicans voted no. The House approved a resolution on Monday that expressed support for Finland and Sweden joining NATO, exactly 2 months after the Nordic countries submitted applications to become part of the military alliance amid Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The resolution cleared the House in a 394 to 18 vote, with only Republicans voting in opposition. 2 Democrats and 17 Republicans did not vote. See, if there's just a basic reason why you should be mad at these elected progressives is how often they fuck up votes on foreign policy. Because if they were really progressive, then votes like these are easy done no's. And even though we know in this time that they could vote no and it may not make a difference on a lot of these things passing, except for like that Iron Dome thing wherein a bunch of the other House members caused AOC to cave on her no vote. And she showed how little conviction and testicular fortitude that she had to stand up and stick to her guns on wanting to vote no for that $10 billion Iron Dome funding last year. And there's so many more. And the thing is, they usually get this whole designed vote that way that they're able to, everyone has their little thing that they get to have a little designed vote on to make sure that they don't get seen as voting yes on it. For Rashida Tlaib, she usually gets to be a safe no on stuff related to Israel and Palestine. Ilhan Omar used to be more safe on Somalia, but as you can tell, she's starting to get booed by Somalians, so it's not exactly working out for her as well as it used to. And I imagine if they vote on some foreign policy related to Puerto Rico, I believe that AOC is Puerto Rican, if I remember correctly, and that'd probably be a safe no vote if it makes things worse on them. And so on and so forth. Just like Cori Bush gets to be the only Democrat who really gets to be open about being the most open about being pro defund the police. Oh, yes, that right there, exactly. The GOP lawmakers who voted no were Rep. Sandy Biggs, Dan Bishop, Lauren Boebert, Madison Cawthorn, Ben Klein, Michael Cloud, Warren Davidson, Matt Gates, Bob Good, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Morgan Griffin, Thomas Massey, Tom McClintock, Mary Miller, Ralph Norman, Matt Rosendale, Chip Roy, and Jefferson Van Drew. The measure, which has bipartisan sponsorship, expresses support for Finland and Sweden's historic decision to apply for NATO and calls on member states to formally support them joining the military alliance. It also opposes any effort by the Russian Federation to adversely respond to Finland and Sweden's decision to join the alliance and urges NATO members to satisfy the 2% defense spending pledge that countries signed on at the 2014 Wales Summit. That declaration said NATO allies currently spending at least 2% of their gross domestic product on defense will try to continue to do so. The House passed resolution 2 months after Finland and Sweden submitted their applications to become members of NATO. On June 29th, the military alliance officially invited the two Nordic countries to join the group. Even before then, however, on June 9th, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee approved a resolution by voice vote that called on NATO to quickly grant membership to Finland and Sweden. The push for Finland and Sweden to join NATO gained steam this year, particularly after Russia launched its invasion on February 24th, which is still ongoing. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky recently said the war could come to an end by the conclusion of this year. Not if NATO has any say about that, sir. That right there is spot on, WCSN. And that this is supposedly social democracies. Think about all those that fit into the NATO. As Finland is the world's happiest country, I wonder how citizens feel about spending 2% of their GDP to become part of a thug organization. My point exactly. I think that people here would feel much better knowing that only 2% of GDP was going to support a proxy war. Zelensky / Guaido 24. Dems win. Oh. What's scary about that is Zelensky may have enough charisma to prop up a Juan Guaido. Especially if, for some reason, Republicans do something really dumb and rig the election against Trump and DeSantis. But they're not dumb enough to. I don't think they're dumb enough to do something like that. But you never know. But see, that's essentially what progressives in the squad are supporting. An expanded power of an imperialist force of nations who would rather make their own citizens suffer at the hands of their Russophobia. Because that's essentially what's taking place right now. And we know that Vladimir Zelensky has now become one of the biggest bullshitters in the world because there's no way that war is going to end by the end of the year. We know that the United States, the biggest pimp of the war, is going to make sure to keep flooding in money to Ukraine to make that shit continue to go. Yeah, that right there from that thread that Aries had that I shared back in the AOC, major problem with the whole political and celebrity worship because this guy used to be a comedian beforehand, and I missed the opportunity to do a full on segment talking about how Ben Stiller is supposed to be able to play this Zelensky cat in some movie, and I just thought about how they looked like uh, major vanilla midgets because I know that Kevin Nash coined the term in criticism of like small wrestlers getting to become the world champions, and I think it's much more aptly applied to when a guy like Zelensky gets to have power, and then you have Ben Stiller make a warship stop for him. But let's go shift gears to another thing that went through the House, and it's the Respect for Marriage Act. So, as usual, for this one, these are just distractions from the 16-18% congressional approval, supposedly the worst in U.S. history. So, WCSN, you really have to think if Congress has that low of approval rating, then how do so many of them manage to keep their seats election after election? And this is the point where this should make people really question the legitimacy of their elections when they get rigged in favor of helping the people who are in the club keep that seat as much as possible. Hashtag rigged. But when we talk about rigged, it's a much different way because we really try to talk about it from all angles. While when some maggot talks about elections being rigged, they're just upset that Republicans didn't win. Respect for Marriage Act. So let's just free flow through the Twitter search, shall we? The Respect for Marriage Act passed in a 267 to 157 vote, with 47 Republicans supporting the measure. Passed by the Senate and signed into law, would require individuals be considered married if they were wed in a state where marriage was legal. As usual, uh, libertarians are better on this, as you can see from Justin Amash. But I know that there's some, I think Marco Rubio had a pretty critical tweet against it. Uh, I think
of
this
affordable
is,
gasoline
let's
into their
listen to
vehicles.
this.
Okay, they care about being able to stick that nozzle inside their car's little buttholes and still being able to pick up straight KFC for their love and heterosexual family. They don't care about gay marriage. No one's ever approached Senator Rubio about gay marriage, and certainly they would if gay marriage was actually a thing. Look at him. Look at his teeth. There are so many of them. Why wouldn't anyone want to marry Senator Rubio? And so yeah, Senator Rubio will be voting no on the marriage erection on the marriage project. I'm sorry, on the Marriage Protection Act.
What's for a moment there? That sounded like this spokeswoman for Senator Rubio said, "Mr. Rubio will be voting against the Marriage Erection Act." Let me go back. and see if I'm not the only one who heard that way.
On the Marriage on the Marriage Protection Act. Wait, that's
You know, she was tempted to say Marriage Erection Act.
mouthful. Here at the office, Senator Rubio and we like to say, like, that's what she said. That's a mouthful. That's what she said, because she is performing fellatio on a man because she is one of God's children. So yeah, Senator Rubio will be voting.
Blah 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 blah. Traditional Bible. She fumbled her words pretty hard. Did she say gasol? Is this a joke? I didn't even know what I was getting myself into, but that turned out to be better than I thought. Hey, look, that's me. I should retweet this again. But let's be honest, if Democrats are you know what? I think we should go back and play that one more time. I would say that wasn't good enough.
About gay marriage. Okay, they care about gasoline. They care about being able to pump that hot load of affordable gasoline into their vehicles. Okay, they care about being able to stick that nozzle inside their car's little buttholes and still being able to pick up straight KFC for their loving heterosexual family. They don't care about gay marriage. No one's ever approached Senator Rubio about gay marriage, and certainly they would if gay marriage was actually a thing. Look at him, look at his teeth. There are so many of them. Why wouldn't anyone want to marry Senator Rubio? And so yeah, Senator Rubio will be voting no on the marriage erection on the marriage on the Marriage Protection Act. Ooh, that's a mouthful. Here at the office, Senator Rubio and we like to say, like, that's what she said. That's a mouthful. That's what she said, because she is performing fellatio on a man because she is one of God's children. So yeah, Senator Rubio will be voting.
Putting gas in the tailpipe is kind of a no. I didn't realize how much this woman tried to sexualize pumping gas. What the fuck? Oh, that was gold. But let's be honest. Who would support a Marriage Erection Act? But I know that this is just like an empty performative vote when it comes down to it, because you may not even see Democrats have enough votes once you try to put this through the House. Tweak much. We know Rubio tweaks aplenty. And I think that's what extended to his spokeswoman trying to explain the reasoning for not following through on the whole, the voting no. But for a moment, let's just say that even Democrats would ultimately come up short by just ensuring gay marriage. She was probably one of those slutty models that posed on top of sports. I want to say that you're wrong, Kelly. Yeah, you're right on that with their UCSN. They they definitely do get this cocaine passed around, and it's not just Hunter Biden that's using it. But uh, it's funny because even just a basic marriage, two-person marriage, wouldn't even like be as left as the Democratic Party could be. If they really wanted to be left, they wouldn't. They would make it a right to allow for three or four-person marriages. That would be going to even to the left of what Democrats currently want to do. Just because neither party is going to want to properly recognize polyamory, but or polygamy, or any of the polys, and that would be, and they wouldn't be truly socially left until they reach that point. To be honest with you, so I don't have anything in terms of a sports story for tonight's show, but today is the 10-year anniversary of the Aurora Theater shooting. So I think I'll close off by doing a bit of a reflection now that we're 10 years since this has happened. So I'm going to start off with play a video for a bit. Then I'll add some thoughts. Utah statehood should be revoked for never getting rid of polygamy. I mean, if there's one way to potentially figure out a way to turn Utah left, uh, allowing recognizing polygamy and polyamorous marriages would be a good start. But let's get to that video.
Men and women of the Aurora Police Department responded to the Century 16 Theater, where a lone gunman went in and started assaulting our citizens. Every year at this time, we come together to remember those that we lost and the heroes that were saved that night.
It doesn't feel like 10 years. It feels like yesterday.
I feel like it's my peaceful day to kind of come up for air and breathe for a minute and remember back on Veronica and all of our 13 angels and them being up there saying, we're so happy for what you and our family members and our board did, and we appreciate that you celebrated our lives, and we want them to be remembered and never forgotten. And so it also makes me happy.
Today, AJ would be 28. He would be a ceramics teacher. He would be married. He would be a husband and a father. He would still be AJ. He would still be bouncing around and bringing people together. And, he had a big heart. So he wanted to make sure everybody knew that they mattered.
For me, 720 means it's just like this quiet silence for me. But for a lot of survivors that I talk to, it's like on that day, the day that's the anniversary or tragiversary as some people call it, that's the day they just want to shut down and quiet out the world and not talk to anybody.
I don't even really go to see him at his grave. I'll go see him on the 27th, which is when we buried him. But I won't go on the 20th because, I go there on his birthday and Mother's Day. And
So there were 70 people that were injured and 13 lives lost. A lot of reports report 12 lost, but for my family, my cousin Ashley, as well as Veronica, they were preparing to have another family member in their lives. And so it's still a loss, that 13th. And so that's why our number is, to us, always there's 13 lives lost.
720 means healing, growth. I know that a lot of people are still struggling, but I think that in my situation, I think that I've, through the counseling and things like that, I think I'm able to move forward. Yeah, not easy, but it's every day is a new adventure kind of thing.
Wow, 10 years is a long time. So much time has passed. But then when so many other communities started having the same experience as we did, and it started happening in succession, I found myself saying, wow, it seems like yesterday that this happened.
It changed everything. That 10 years ago it's like a whole, not just turning a page, it's reading in a whole new book.
On July 20th, 2012, 13 lives were taken. AJ Boyk, Jonathan Blunk, Alexander Teves, Alex Sullivan, Rebecca Wingo, John Larimer, Jesse Childress, Veronica Moser Sullivan, Baby Toes Moser, Matt McQuinn, Michaela Medic, Jessica Gowie, Gordon Cowden. Today we remember those 13 lives, and we hold their families and loved ones in our hearts today as we say their names and think of them today. And we can honor them by doing just one thing: to be kind to another human being, or even just be kind to yourself.
So, 10 years ago, I remember waking up early in the morning that day, hearing about the news, and I also happened to call in from work that day because I felt sick. But I know hearing this news, it definitely made things worse, knowing that a shooting just happened at a theater I've been to once. And I remember it was early on when I was dating my ex. We walked from her apartment to the Atwater Theater to watch the Love Group. It was that Mike Myers and Justin Timberlake movie. So it did feel like it hit different knowing that connection. But also at the same time, with the Columbine shooting, I've had a few family members go on to go to high school there. Well, after that shooting, but yeah, it was definitely a hard day knowing that it's somewhere you actually been to in the past, and that always gives you a different perspective whenever that when a shooting happens and it's a place that you know that you have gone to, unlike when it's a place that you haven't been to before. Even if you ended up just going there once, just because you think about it, if you're anywhere at the wrong time, then a shooting can happen. But you also know where I currently stand on gun control, because I believe that capitalism is the thing that causes most of these mass shooters to get to this point, and that gun control must start with the state first before we disarm the proletariat. And seeing that after this 10-year reflection, that even with all that's going on, that we still haven't made progress on doing anything to improve society and make it safer for people. If anything, we've mostly made things less safe. WCSN. My nephew had made plans to see that show that night at that theater. Glad my sis talked him out of it earlier that day. Quote, you have to work in the morning. Crazy that. What family do you have down there, WCSN? Because I remember that was a big Batman film that premiered, that midnight premiere. And even though I know many of us have continued to go to theaters, but since that shooting happened, now when I go in, I look at the possible places that, like a random exit that a person could come out from, or if you're going to be in a position where you're going to be caught off guard by the people that walk through the tunnels as they go in through that theater. Hey, Yipper. Yeah, I'm saying wow too, because even though I was like 10, 12 miles away from there, it's still crazy thinking about how a simple inconsequential decision could have been a life-altering one as well. And WCSN's nephew, Eve, saved himself from a lot of trauma for not going to the Aurora Theater on that night. And it's crazy how when we have these unique shootings, like the first high-profile shooting in a grocery store, the first high-profile shooting in a school, movie theater, concerts, baseball game, how it, at the very minimum, alters your conscience when you're going around there. My sis and most of her kids live in or around Aurora. She has 6 kids, all adults, and 6 grandkids, all growing up there. Wow, you got quite a bit of family out there. And if there's one thing I do need to do better is talking more about local stories on this show. Usually when I have the right type of distribution on a show, I got the popular stuff that most of the other indie left media talks about. Then I'll have some sports story, then a local story. So I do need to get better with more local stories, but if you have a way of sharing the channel out to them, that would be cool to have more like local support for this channel, and I'll definitely be working to make sure I work in more local stories on this show going forward, if it's like some of the time. Well, America's only had over 300 mass shootings this year. We're exceptional at one thing. Most definitely. This is like crushing a record for like having most turnovers as a football team. It's like the United States is like a team that turns the ball over like 10 times a game as a football team, while everyone else barely averages one. That's the type of bad standards that the United States is setting with the way that they continue to not do anything good, bad, or in between to respond to this problem. My brother's wife's fam lives where that grocery store was shot up a few years back. Her sister works at the same store, but it was her day off. Are you talking about that Boulder King Supers shooting that happened last year? Because that those connections are wild, man. If you are referring to that Boulder King Supers where that shooter was last year, because that seems like my state, Colorado, probably has the most notable shootings compared to the resume that other states have, which is very sad. And the fact that there could still be like about 10 more big shootings to discuss at minimum before the end of this year. And this Uvalde shooting has really man, it is just wild how much family connection that you have lined up to the shooting. But I just thought it would be a different way to end tonight's show by doing a little moment of reflection, since it was the 10-year anniversary of the Aurora Theater shooting. So I'd like to thank y'all so much for coming out to the show tonight on the Rochford Files with your host, Andrew Rochford. I know the people here that are here like the stream. I know since Yipper's here, if you're able to share this out more, because I see you're in the chat of many of the streams that I like to watch, especially when I'm at work. Also, still got to nail down the third platform that I'd like to do some live streams on. I'm still figuring out that part. In addition to that, when will the next stream be? I'm not exactly sure on that one. It could be Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern. I could do one then, or I may wait till Saturday or Sunday night to do it. But with that being said, for now, also don't forget to go. All the relevant links to the Rochford Files are in the link tree in the description. This is Andrew Rochford saying goodbye and good night.